Won't you lend your lungs to me? Mine are collapsing. Plant my feet and bitterly breathe up the time that's passed. Breath I'll take and breath I'll give. Pray the day's not poised. Stand among the ones that live in lonely indecision.
Welcome to the Crackpot Podcast. We have a special guest today. Dennis Dale joins us from the Pacific Northwest. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you for having me. Hello, James.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for coming on. Sorry I was befuddled buffoon on whatever that media was I was on with you and Luke on Sunday morning. So whatever. Whatever.
The befuddled is all on our side, yeah.
Was it you flashing questions up on the screen to me?
Well,
when we're somebody else.
When we're in that chat format, it's so you're talking to me and Luke and whoever else. The three of us can post directly onto that Hangouts chat questions. So that could be any one of us posting those questions on that, what you see next to your screen when you're doing it Google Hangouts. Then on YouTube, you have the chat where anybody watching comes in, and that's the freak show. What do you ask?
Okay, I noticed stuff popping up on the screen, and I don't think I addressed any of it. I tried to remember one of them, and so I had a hard time multitasking with my ears and eyes.
What James and Dennis are talking about is that last week James appeared on a live hangout with Luke Ford, Dennis Dale, and a few others, as well as like a live audience, a sort of virtual audience. We thought we'd have Dennis on this week to continue that conversation, but in the more old-fashioned technology. We do it on Skype with just the three of us.
So, I'm sorry about our spurgy audience. They're just so focused on they really are. And, and on the worst questions, right now. I mean, I say the worst, but the toughest questions, which is great. Luke is an Orthodox converted Jew who calls himself alt-right, and he's got like half of his guys are Nazis and the other half are Jewish people who come to see the freak show. It's weird.
I tuned back in for a while later on when I think I was washing dishes, and there was a Jewish dude that was talking with you, and I think another guy that wasn't Luke about why America has to be multicultural and we should all be speaking Chinese and German and everything, and so I was kind of wondering.
It's such a freak show in there right now. I don't mean to denigrate it, but it's kind of a freak show. That guy, in fact, the Zen master Jewish guy who is gone now because he got furious. He was funny. Speaking of masculinity and aggression, this guy had this whole thing where he prefaced everything by saying, "I don't mean you any harm. I have no animosity toward you." It was just this thoroughly passive aggressive, as far as I saw it, style that this guy had, and just constantly reminding us that he's totally serene inside and he feels no anger toward anybody. And then you'd get into these conversations, you could just see it bubbling to the surface underneath that mask, that this guy inside was raging more than anyone. He was a fascinating character.
He was the fellow that I remember him admitting to not having any experience with black people, for instance, not with black people, but with rural white people. And he was imagining that he would be very intimidated and harassed and everything.
Rural white people are scarier than black people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And he's like, he's sure that he would be much safer around black people than he would be around these rural white people. And the way he discussed it was from the point of view of having an alienated opinion. There was like nothing in his discussion that even touched upon reality.
Right. No, he wasn't talking about any black folks. He was talking about the streets of Detroit.
Okay.
We had this poor guy here trying to bail him out.
We know there's no black folks in Detroit, so that's pretty safe.
So he tells me, yes, rural Iowa is more of a threat to him. He would feel, not just that, he would feel safer on the streets of Detroit than on the streets of a rural Iowa town,
That's
but he
crazy.
really just He really just lives in a room somewhere with a computer, so
He does.
It's all fantasy. I love having face-to-face conversations with people like that. It's always so much fun to unsuccessfully try to comfort them.
Yeah.
I just go along with whatever their opinion is. When I meet people like that, whatever they believe, I pretend to believe it and agree with it as much as possible. Just so I can watch it all derail farther down the conversation when I slip and they get an inkling that I'm some evil creature.
Somebody described our life here in PC current year America as being living under occupation, at least if you're maybe a white male like us. Kind of living under occupation. You have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful what you do.
Yeah, it's something awful. It really is. James, you wrote about yesterday all the TV. Well, you posted it yesterday, all the TV you watched, and every white man is a.
When I was in New York,
Right.
It was stunning because in Manhattan, I was in a white city. There was some pepper and nutmeg sprinkled in there, but it was all salt and sugar, and it was. The bar I was in, Dempsey's Bar, it was all white people in this bar. It's even the servers in this area, Manhattan, were all redheaded Irish people, like these really handsome, redheaded, tall Irish guys, and these beautiful redheaded Irish girls, and they all spoke with this language and everything. It's like they shipped them in specifically to cater to who was there. But what was on the TV, even with the local New York TV programming, there was a discussion about politics. The whole panel is white women and men of color. Sports, the whole panel is white women, men of color. Golf, black people talking about golf. Okay, that's it. Baseball, the only baseball player is black. On ESPN, I didn't see a single white man for like 2 hours. There's like 5 different women. All the women are moderating the conversations, and they're all acting like a slave mistress with their Negro bucks on the porch, asking her if the tea is sweet enough. Afraid they're going to get cast back out into the fields again. It was really, I would have been more offended as a black man than as a white man to actually see this, because at least the white man's not even present. He doesn't exist in this matrix anymore. He's just been eliminated. He shows up as a fool in commercials is all. They even Taco Bell did an ad which had, first there's this white guy ranting and raving at the TV and his black friend sitting behind him judging him for being this loud, obnoxious person. And then the next commercial, there's this pale, frail white boy sitting on a beanbag chair. And he's reaching out, begging hesitantly for a snack with one hand to this guy that looks like Jason Momoa. He looks like your mixed race UN war god laying out on the couch, right? And he's extending his hand with a nacho in it, and it looks like God extending his hand to man. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a rip-off of that. I was watching this stuff, and all of this product is being marketed to predominantly white males. White men are even the predominant consumers of NBA coverage, let alone the other sports. And this is all being marketed to white men in a white city, and I'm watching it, and it was just amazing. I couldn't hear a word because it was in a bar, but it was very educational. And then when, of course, when in the commercials, the men and women shown together, the women are all dominant. The man waits on the beach for the woman to run out, and then she takes his hand and she leads him to the surf. And the best one, and I'm sitting here next to this white nationalist in the bar, and it's a betting commercial. And he's like, you know what's going to hop out of the wood pile, right? You know what's hopping out. I was like, look, dude, you got to look past this because we're already done. We've been like written out of the narrative. Let's see what they do to the black guy in this. Right. So obviously this woman who's just bought this new bed is now turning in for the night with her mixed race, probably 1/3 African boyfriend, who's now the template for all your action movie stars. And when they curl up to go to bed, he rolls over on his side and she spoons him.
Oh my God.
I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I told him, I said, this isn't about putting the black man up on a pedestal.
It's the white women. It's
Yeah.
because we have all the money. We spend all our husband's money.
And the black dude has just been put back into woodshed. I mean, he's just like the white woman's servant. It's really funny. The whole narrative just cracked me up.
Well, I mean, the two most common themes are the dopey father and the dopey white guy. And it's always, like you said, that commercial, it's always the black neighbor sitting there shaking their head at, oh, Johnny's foolishness again, right? It's just, and it's so inverted. Because,
Yeah.
come on, frankly, when you think of buffoonishness and stupidity, you don't think of, I'm sorry, you don't think of white people exhibiting that more than black folk.
Dennis, what's your, for our readers, or listeners, I'm sorry, okay, I hope it's the same thing. The name of your blog, you have an online?
I'm an old Blogspot blog. I call it Untethered. You can just Google my name and find it.
Okay, Dennis Dale.
And I post a couple times a week, maybe on there. Just now, lately, I've been more focused on doing the Sunday show with Luke Ford. You know, that's been a lot of fun and interesting. And it's getting more interesting all the time. But yeah, that's pretty much it for online efforts right now.
I listened to your 2 interviews with Kevin Michael Grace, which I enjoyed, particularly your stay in the lockup.
Oh yeah, that was a blast.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I should have wrote that up in a proper article too. It was interesting. I got arrested along with all the anti-Trump protesters. What was it? Inauguration Day, I think. It was the inauguration protests, or maybe it was before. I don't even remember. We had daily protests for 2 months after the election. Literally, at least one organized protest every day in the city of Portland, and then it just got heated, more and more heated. Right around the time of the inauguration, they were breaking things in the street, and you know, they were causing the Antifa was everywhere, and they were causing all kinds of damage. So the cops got fed up and arrested about 100 of us. I got swept up along with all the lefties. Probably the only one there who wasn't either a lefty or some marginal character that got, you know, drawn into it. And there were a lot of those.
So there were some homeless dudes that got sucked up in this too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I woke up on the the concrete bench in the drunk tank where they had us. I woke up and a homeless guy's feet were right there, because he was curled up next to me. Yeah, it was horrifying. But there were a couple of outright homeless guys there, and there were guys who were like marginal, like criminal element. And then there are the political guys, and among them, most of them are kind of flaky. You know, they're not very well informed at all on politics. And then there's that actually the kind of the minority contingent within this group, as far as I could tell, were the people who were genuinely political and, you know, think they know this stuff and are genuinely engaged in political activism.
So you're like the dolphin that was hauled up in the tuna net.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I like getting along well with everybody too, you know. Nobody asks what your story is, you know.
They kind of probably assume you're on their side anyway, right? Right. And I'm not going to tell them, you know. There's a certain camaraderie you feel nonetheless, right? Even though we're secret enemies, I'm with these guys and we're all in this boat together. You know, yeah, we're joking, we're getting along. Just one night in jail. You have true journalism credibility now.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm glad for you.
I felt like such an idiot. The only feeling I had was, you know, that feeling of I'm such an idiot when you've done something stupid and you know you can't get it back, you know. But I'm glad I went through it because it was quite the experience. Yeah. I mean, I went out there to get a look at what, you know, this world, and I got a good look at it.
Were you? I'm thinking of the Battle of Seattle, but maybe you weren't in Portland.
I lived in Seattle, but I wasn't there when that action was going on. What was it?
WTO, I think.
WTO or GA, yeah, protest.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Well, yeah, those were more innocent times, weren't they? I mean, you know, now they're marching the street against Trump. They're basically marching for that global order, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
You don't know if they're becoming a girl. And they didn't at the time. They didn't back in, it's been a while now, right? 10 years or more since that.
It's closer to 20.
Wow.
I remember I was in college.
They were confused then, and now there's just more so in that, they don't know. Everybody who's in the so-called resistance is basically marching on behalf of some global corporate order to the extent you can. They're certainly not marching on my behalf.
Oh, definitely not. Not for the white guy.
I think James has said he's never been arrested.
I have never been arrested. I've been harassed by the pigs 27 times, and I've never been arrested. I was not trained by my mama to argue with those fellows in the blue suits with the guns, so I acquitted myself well in all these circumstances. I was once charged with 2 felonies, but I wasn't arrested.
We used to get the talk. It's funny. You remember the controversy around the talk with black folks telling their kids, be careful with white cops because they're all horrible racists.
Right.
We used to get that talk as working class kids, white, black, whoever you were. You got that talk, which was basically, don't smart off the cops. You can't win, Say yes, sir. Say no, sir. Keep your hands on the wheel so they don't think you're, the basic talk. Then somehow this got appropriated to, supposedly black people are telling their kids, they have to be careful around these crazy racist cops.
Oh, those are suburban middle class black people that are telling their kids that. Yeah. What the ghetto black mamas tell their kids is to protect the back of their head. Okay?
Really?
And then by example, they just teach them how to argue with the cops and scream at authority figures and attack men. And then these guys do it and they end up getting shot. I mean, I only know one black dude in Baltimore whose mother told him to avoid problems with the police. Okay. Most of them actually push their children towards the police. Don't let the police tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And so it's really weird. So you have this situation now where this disastrous violence in the cities that mostly involves black people who have been taught to argue and fight with the cops by their parents, by their mother, is now somehow taken up by suburban middle-class black people and white people. And the experience you had as a working-class white guy being told to be careful with the cops, don't mouth off to them, that's now appropriated as like this total black thing in America, and it's not, because those black suburban people, all they are, culturally, they're just, suburban Americans that believe the same stuff as the white people. Right. They went out there to live with the white people. See, I don't see a distinction. I don't even see a black and white culture in the United States. I just see it as like, one really mongrel population that's got a class structure. And, the bottom section of it's mostly black people that have been left behind by the black people that want to scramble up higher into the structure. And then you get this feral, it's not even a culture. What you have in cities like Baltimore is not a culture. It's just like this feral hostility matrix.
When I see the actions of Michael Brown when he got shot by that cop, and with Trayvon Martin when he was beating down that guy and got shot, I wonder what the parents are telling him. I don't think they're telling him be careful of the cop. I think they're telling him don't take any crap from cops and don't take any crap from white people. I got harassed on the street just the other time.
They weren't right away. And the fact is, they're not being told much. Most of them don't have anybody teaching them anything. Okay, they're just patterning their behavior after their mother's behavior. That's really all it is. There's some guys I know have been sat down by an uncle or, on a stoop somewhere because the uncle doesn't have a place to lay his head. Depends on who he's banging that night, really, because most of your men in the community are effectively homeless. At some point, some guys that have it together were talked to by an uncle and they listen to him, and that might mean that they're a professional criminal that's careful, or it might mean they went and got a job and they're trying to get out of that matrix, that situation. So, because when you go out and you work a job and you come back to that block where you live, you're in a whole lot of danger. As soon as you get the job, you kind of have to leave because you're going to start getting robbed every Friday afternoon.
And we see the process here. not just that, but the whole political process, affirmative action, the culture. The whole effect, it seems to me, is just to suck all whatever talent there is in these cities out, right? Any black person with anything on the ball gets the hell out, and everybody left behind, are people who can less capable of taking care of themselves, and the worst people, the criminals element in.
So I see the black population in the United States as a group of people who have basically been ripped apart, socially turned into this Frankenstein monster, so that you have a criminal class that can punch way above their weight and make things very threatening for the productive class. That's just the way I see it. Not too many people agree with that, but the people I've worked with have been about 50% black people. The only ones that have a healthier attitude than the white people that are still in Baltimore City working crappy jobs are usually guys that are rural guys. They came from somewhere usually in the Carolinas or Virginia or Georgia, and they ended up, or rural Maryland, and they ended up in Baltimore for some job. And they're usually working their way out of Baltimore as quick as they can. So that one of the guys I coached said that there's no diversity in Baltimore, that virtually the entire population has the same values and behaviors and everything. It's very difficult to distinguish between people even from East Baltimore and West Baltimore.
So a whole separate culture exists within Baltimore.
Yeah. It's really 50% of Baltimore is really this feral criminal culture. And then the other 50% is, a very mixed race group of people that are actually trying to run the city, mostly in the form of businesses, small businesses and stuff like that, and try to survive and try to keep things together. The other 50% are, that other 50% is almost all one race of people. And it's very toxic. It's to the point where you could literally be robbed in broad daylight in front of a crowd of people, and some people stop and watch maybe. Some people might stop and help the people that are robbing you or cheer them on or something like that. But there's a very slim chance that anybody would do anything to stop what was in progress. I had two guys tried to attack me right in front of an 8-man road crew at about 2 p.m. at the corner of a primary and secondary street with traffic on the road at broad daylight. And it's
no fear at all.
No. The only eventually the one dude figured out he was going to get stabbed, and he stopped, and he wouldn't let the other guy push him into me. I had two guys that were heading in to get a pizza, and the one guy saw me, and he sent the other guy after me. And then when I defended myself, the guy got upset at the other guy. He got indignant at me that I would stand and fight. So he backs up before we make contact. He looks over his shoulder at the other dude and gives him this what the hell thing with his open hands. And the other guy said, my bad, wrong white man. So that's the attitude since the riots. It didn't used to be the attitude, but with the riots, looting and mob violence is regarded now as having municipal sanction from the mayor's office. That's the way it is now.
But those already anti-white attitudes that were there got to be intensified or just emboldened, right? Now some jerk on the street, he just feels he has a right to mess with any white dude who comes into his view.
Well, there was always a lot of seething hatred for white people. And I can't blame him, because half of the cops that randomly beat the shit out of these people for no reason were white dudes. And they were under the impression it was being done for white people, even though it wasn't being done for white people. It was just being done for sport. The hatred was always there, but there was always a fear that the police would take the side of the white person.
Right.
But since the riots, that fear is not only gone, but it's erased. Now what commonly happens is when a group of black people try to attack a white person, if there's any resistance, they will immediately call the police. The police are now like the backup mugging squad. And the way things go, it's predicated on witnesses. If 3 dudes try to get you, if you're in Baltimore and you punch one of them in the mouth, they all back up and they call 911. One of them's taking videos of the guy's bloody mouth, and then when the cops get there, the two that you didn't mark up, they're going to be singling you out as a guy that tried to rob this dude who they don't even know, even though they're half brothers. All of a sudden, they won't even know this dude. Okay, so this is that criminal behavior, that the fact that this population of people was just subjected to random police violence for about 50 years with no cause other than the fact that they're black. And they didn't have to be in a white neighborhood. They could be in a black neighborhood. You're just randomly going to get your ass kicked by cops. The fact that they're subjected to that, and then they're foot soldiers in the drug war, which really was and is servicing the surrounding white communities. These guys, these black dudes are taking most of the risk, and they're supplying drugs to all these white junkies from all the counties around Baltimore. And in Baltimore, they developed this really high level understanding of how the criminal justice system works. It's their system. They've all been through it. They grew up in it. Everybody in their family's been in jail or prison. And they're just, now it's their thing. I mean, I had a dude call the cops on me just because I put my back to a pole when he was coming up behind me. There's a big young dude coming up behind me at night. I put my back to a light pole. And then he called the cops on me for that.
Well, their relatives work in the system. You've got all these 911 operators, all these administrative people in the system are related to the same crooks. I think you've talked about this.
Well,
so there's a whole network there.
That police department is unreal. It's not like any other police department in the country. I don't think it is. I mean, did you see that, James? Did you see that corruption trial?
I read a couple of stories out of it, and yeah, it's a lot wider than anybody wants to think as far as the corruption goes. But I've even had cops tell me that. I've had a couple of guys, a guy that wrote me that said he was leaving the force, another guy I met who's an electrician now, who left Baltimore County Police because he was afraid that he was going to get in trouble for not stealing, like the other cops. And then there's also the fact that over half of the cops in Baltimore City are blacks.
And they're coming from the same pool of people, their friends and family members who are committing the crime, right?
Yeah. So it's like having Irish cops in the 1920s in Chicago. You know, this is what you're going to have. I just think it's a weaponized population. It's interesting that all you have to do is brainwash suburban middle class people, and it becomes the national narrative. You know, we have this narrative now that you know, of the highly intelligent black man and woman and the really stupid middle class white married couple and the retarded white dad and all that kind of stuff. And this is actually people are really buying this.
Well, most people don't. There are large portions of the country which don't have very many black people, so they rely on television to understand.
It's fascinating. Still all these white people have no personal experience. Sorry, James.
Right. Yes. So it's really fascinating to me. I know I worked with a guy named Tommy who was an idiot. He was a white guy who we affectionately termed our redneck on the crew because we were mostly city guys working on this night crew. He lived on Johnny Cake Road. That's how far out of the city he lived. Okay. And he comes into the center of Baltimore City on the highway. The highways will shoot you right into the center of the city. So you can have a job working in the center of this place and be a rural person. And, you know, unless your car breaks down on a freeway ramp, you know, you never subjected to much of it. But there was an argument between these guys about the O.J. Simpson trial. This is how long ago I worked with this guy. Tommy's in an argument with a former gangbanger from Capitol Heights, Maryland, okay, who's went by the name the Mac Daddy, okay, and he would refer to himself as the Mac Daddy, okay. This is a guy that talks like a pro wrestler. He gets in an argument with Tommy, and Tommy starts ranting and raving about you people, and one day I'm gonna get my SK and I'm gonna be sawing off Negro eggs and stuff. And he's just going on and on talking about shooting black people on a crew that's like half black and half white. And the night crew captain was a black dude, and his real name was Israel Flood. He was a 14-year-old sharecropper when he sold his hogs and chickens and moved to Baltimore from Georgia. And he actually got in a fight in the lunchroom with the Mac Daddy. Okay, so he was actually I pulled Tommy away so the Mac Daddy wouldn't do anything manual to him, and then the Mac Daddy was very upset about the fact that Israel wasn't putting this guy out of the store, that he was just letting him calm down.
Right.
And Flood looks at him and he said, "Boy, don't you know nothing?" He said, "That's the stupidest white man I ever knowed." Okay? And he points to Tommy. And this is like, Tommy almost cried when he heard that because he knew what it meant. But implicit in Israel's statement is the fact that generally on a crew, your smart guys are the white guys. And you'll still see this on all the city crews. They staff up as many blacks as they can. But the person operating the equipment is usually a white guy, predominantly because he can pass the drug tests. They want to have 100% black employment for Baltimore City municipal jobs, but when you're operating heavy equipment, they can't have people that smoke dope every day doing it. So, in every line of work in Baltimore City, it's understood that, the smartest dude on a crew is usually going to be a white guy, and the dumbest guy is usually going to be a black guy, and the other groups will have some people in the middle. But Israel calling Tommy the dumbest white man he ever knowed was like, I almost saw that, and it actually went right into the brain of the Mac Daddy, and he instantly put it together. And he was thereafter nice to Tommy. He treated Tommy as if we would treat a Down syndrome person. His read on that was he's a retarded white dude. Okay, so if you get a white dude that's like as stupid as we are, he's a retard. You ought to be nice to him. Feel sorry for him. So
it's like they don't understand that the phrase "white trash" is a backhanded slur to non-whites too,
right?
Because it was the distinction between good whites, regular whites, or real whites, and the white trash. They're out there with the blacks and everybody else was the idea.
Right, competing for slave work.
Even with a term like that in our background, we still have the predominant idea in America now is that the people who have done bad things to black folks are actually poor white people.
Yeah.
And the wealthy white people are their friends. This is just Jim Goad wrote about it in the Redneck Manifesto, the politics playing off the poor whites against the poor blacks in the South during Jim Crow, which is something that anytime it's depicted to us in movie or literature, it's depicted as the poor whites helping the rich whites keep the poor blacks down, when that wasn't the case, when they were just played off against each other. Did you see? Sorry, go on. I wanted to ask you a question when you're done.
No, go ahead.
Did you say in your interview with Kevin that you worked in Oakland or lived in Oakland, California?
No. I grew up in LA County, and I've been living in the Northwest for like 25 years.
What was the racial dynamic, as a not well-off paleface down there in LA?
Norwalk, California, which is out on the edge of LA County. It was, I always thought of it in my memory. It was like split between whites and Mexicans. But then I went back and looked up the demographics, and it was like 70% white and 30% Mexican, or more or less. But you were a mixed working class neighborhood where, and it was like, I grew up in the 70s, and before the political correctness took over, we mostly got along. People intermarried, and we were sorted by class, so we had that bond.
And it was probably a different segment of the Mexican population as well that you lived with in the 70s versus now we're deeper into the Central American population.
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny, yeah, but it's hard not to be a racist to notice the difference. You can see the difference in the way people look. And we had gangs, and the gangs are nothing like these black gangs. They're not this chaotic criminal enterprises. They have a little more honor in that these I don't know what they're like now, but the Mexican gangs back in the day they started out as car clubs and they morphed into these street gangs, but they and they were a lot of criminals and a lot of bad guys would wind up in there, but they mostly had a sort of code of honor where they did battle with the other gangs, and they mostly left other people alone, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's still there, but there's this weird thing that you notice too, because we had like one or two guys. It wasn't, it wasn't ghetto, it wasn't the hood, but it was kind of like where I went to school was kind of the hood. It was the barrio, and the hardest core guys in those gangs looked different. You know what I mean? I hate to say it, but they looked more. They were shorter and they had less gracile features, and they just had the mug's face. And it's weird how it works, but I hate to judge people, but you could kind of see it just by looking at people. Who's who?
Well, it's heavily the class structure is heavily stratified in Central America.
In all of Latin America. That's why I say that American white supremacy is weak, very weak compared to Mexican white supremacy or other Latin American white supremacy. And I have background in that culture. My family's from South America. So those cultures really manage to keep their white people on top. People are very sensitive to skin color and other indicators of your ancestry.
Like in Brazil, right? Where
Right.
the multiracial place where they've all established a hierarchy nonetheless. Or when you watch Mexican television, right? And where do all these big blonde tall women come from? And El Salvador Gigante, remember that show?
Oh yes.
Who are these people?
My grandmother watched that every Saturday.
You look at the audience and they all look like normal Mexican neighbors, and then you look over here and it's like this, these glamorous
Amazon
models.
women, yeah, it's funny.
Maybe they have like a factory in Germany or something where they manufacture these people and they export them to Latin America.
Well, no, I mean, this is what I'm trying to tell you, is that in those cultures there are enclaves of highly European populations, and they are protected.
And I think there's a reason why that's not the case in the United States. It's because people of European origin are a majority. And there's no more territory to conquer. We're not going to the moon or Mars. We're just here. And I think you'd now have to go to where most societies were throughout history, where the elite uses the minority to terrorize the majority. Because the majority is where your production is going to come from. And so I think that the United States is consciously, as a political entity, as a social organism, it's trying to make Euro-Americans or Americans of European descent into the mestizos of Central and South America. Just put them under the other people. It's explicitly what it is legally in places like Baltimore City now. That's just what's going to happen to you. You're held to a whole different legal standard if you're a Caucasian than if you're not.
We're in this whole dysfunctional world where they take the worst, like they take the violence in Baltimore, the chaos in Baltimore, and they actually turn that into political power, right? Mm-hmm. By demagoguery, by shaming the rest of us, by blaming the broader culture as a whole for this appalling violence. So it basically translates into what? More money that comes in, federal dollars, more political clout, ever more federal intervention. It's just
and that money's all coming mostly from the suburban population, and some of that money is being used to target that same suburban population. Because, for instance, we have this thing in, I don't know if I talked to you about it, in Baltimore County where I moved to, the Federal Housing Authority won a case against Baltimore County, which must now spend $320 million resettling fatherless, low-income black families from the worst ghettos in Baltimore City into the 5 best zip codes in Baltimore County so that they can get equal opportunity for public schools.
Yeah.
In every public school in Baltimore County that's near the city line, almost the entire student body is black, even though the surrounding neighborhood is 80% white. We recently had in an elementary school in the neighborhood where I live last Friday at 12:30 in the afternoon, 4 teenage women who were not identified. We were left to think that they were Amish or possibly Mennonites, but their race was not identified. But based on the names of the 2 that were arrested, they were Ebonic speakers. These 4 girls are allowed to go into an elementary school. They pretend that they're trying to sign up at one of their children. They are in the lobby when a pregnant, pale-faced teacher starts to leave. They follow her onto the parking lot. They threaten her. She tries to call the police. They take her smartphone. They beat her up. They throw her on the ground. They carjack her. They came there with a car with Virginia plates. Okay. So you have, as soon as you get a guilt-ridden suburban white population, for instance, the news report would not identify these people for who they were. Even though they said they had a detailed description of them, they wouldn't tell you the race, which tells you that they're black. And they don't even show you pictures, so the community's not even allowed to protect themselves by identifying specifically who these people are and calling the police. It's a big secret. So as soon as you can get these people in these suburban areas to feel guilty about this, they'll now actually accept these criminals into their neighborhood and even make excuses for them after they beat them up and rob them. I talked to, when I was in New York last week, I talked to a New York City cop who told me that he's been accused of being a racist by and this is an Asian cop, okay? This is an NYC cop who's an Asian. And on various occasions, he's seen upper-class white women jogging in high-crime areas or in areas where there have been a serial rapist has been active. One of the guys was an actual Olympic sprinter from an African country. Okay, no shit. Who was living in New York and running down
away from this asshole, right? Sorry.
Right, running down female joggers and raping them in the park. Well, he tries to advise these women, do not jog here after dark. And near this one housing project, he said, don't jog here any time. There's a lot of crime here. These white women all accused him of being a racist. Well, one of these white women was raped in broad daylight by 7 black dudes from this housing project, the very woman who called him a racist. Okay, so this is how brainwashed, this is what this media does, how it can actually brainwash the part of your population that is voting, and they have good incomes and everything, and they live in these nice areas, and they are in the process of signing their own death warrant, and they are accepting the importation of these inner city criminals into their neighborhoods, and they will be terrorized. The children of these guilty hipsters and suburban people who want to have fatherless inner city proto-criminals housed in schools with their kids that are going to vote for all this stuff, those kids, when they grow up, what are they going to do? They're going to be getting beat up in school. They're going to be hunted on, and they're going to really have no choice but to support the government in its efforts to police this, right? So they're going to vote for their own higher taxation. Yeah,
and higher level of policing, which is, which becomes oppressive. I think I've seen this go in a couple ways. I think there are people who are really resistant to having their brainwashing removed, and they can be victims of crimes, and they can go on and say that there's a famous story of a girl who was doing charity work in the Caribbean and was raped by a black man, and she went on to defend him, and it was white supremacy that made him do it and all this kind of stuff. But I also think that but they're also, I have witnessed that when you have your own children is when the women start waking up. And this has happened in my hometown, which is not even, it's somewhat violent, but it's not even very violent. But the schools now cater to Spanish-speaking immigrants and their children. And so these schools now have to devote a lot of resources to English as a second language, and that has forced them to close down, for example, the French program in the high school that I graduated from. And so I have a friend whose child is about to start school, and we talk about it pretty openly. She's pretty liberal, but it lets me get my little jabs in because I have my Latino background kind of protecting me as well. And we can talk about how sad it is that these schools are just terrible that we went to, and that you really can't send your kids to anymore. So that's when the white moms start to wake up.
Okay, so you can get some information out there to the pale-faced women by flashing your Latino card.
I do. I exploit
Okay.
it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't speak English when I started school either, so it's kind of fair in a way. But this is like a white girl who has traveled the world as part of her education. She did semesters abroad all over the place, and she took French in high school, which in California, that's an act of, it's really either like a class marker or it's something to say that I'm not going to learn Spanish, because absolutely everybody speaks a little bit of Spanish, and Spanish speakers are everywhere. So to go out of your way and take French in high school is really showing that you're part of the striver class, and you're gonna learn a language that will be less useful but more, let's say, more cultured, something like that. And they closed down the French program at my old high school, which was her old high school. And so she ended up in a private school. So that hits you in the pocketbook, and it hits you in the striver cred. So it's effective.
There's some huge cost. There's some massive cost to all this that we do not look at. We will never look at. They don't want us to look at the overall cost, right, of all of this. Whenever I get anything from my local city government here, it comes now with 2 pages of translations.
Yeah.
A Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Of translations. I mean, it's stuff I can't recognize. I get like a dozen in, and I have no idea what the script is or anything. And they're busily, you were talking about, James, about how they're seeding they're moving ghetto blacks into these good white neighborhoods. There's a whole program called AFFH, I think, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, right?
Yes.
It was an Obama thing that they're going away from. But it was an Obama thing to aggressively do this.
It was that Castro goblin, Julian Castro, right? They put him in charge of HUD.
Did they? Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I think they're trying to pull the plug on that program. It takes time, but Ben Carson's not into it. He's in charge of HUD.
Yeah, as for Latina, you should be offended, because it seems to be where they park their favorite Latin guy, Henry Cisneros, if you remember him.
Yeah.
For some reason, they carve out these slots. Like, for a while, I thought that the Surgeon General had to be a black dude, or so. I don't know why. I don't know if that's even true. They were just on a rope.
Yeah.
Yeah, out here, they like Portland, they call it Whitetopia. It doesn't feel like that to me. I'm downtown a lot, but it's this little white liberal town that's enjoying its isolation, so to speak. And meanwhile, they're seeding the outer suburbs with all the refugees and immigrants they can bring in there very enthusiastically, And when I go out to Beaverton, which is, 10 miles outside of Portland, right? Little bedroom community. I'm back in LA County, I'm back among this majority Latin population, which is fine, but we're not talking to each other. And then I see in the newspaper, this was a while back, test scores are going down, and I can't help noticing that school test scores are going down at the same way that at the same time that the demographics are changing. And for a moment, they can't allow themselves to think our new students just aren't as sharp as our old students.
And I have a witness on this front as well. which is a middle-aged woman, a very nice white woman, who these people who work in schools, they are compensated based on the school's performance. And so when their demographics change and their performance goes down, they start getting upset too, because that hits them in the pocketbook. And so I have also witnessed little inklings of awareness coming in that department.
Yeah. They're in a vice, right? I mean, one side of their liberal philosophy that they have to hold, and then the other side is reality. And we have like George Bush, what was it? No Child Left Behind, which somebody ridiculed as saying that he wanted everybody to be above average, right? So they just put these almost arbitrary standards on them. All right, you're all going to go out there and raise test scores,
just raise them. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
It's the law. You have to do it.
Yeah. And so they go out there and it's not going to happen. And here in Portland, they're putting themselves through convulsions. They call it an equity crisis, quote unquote, because it can't even be considered that there's no other cause for it other than our own white racism. Here they are, and it's starting out. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just Steve Saylor's beat. He covers this a lot, and he found this article which was written by some young, eager education reformers that they had gone back into the newspaper archives and found that 100 years worth of these cycles of, we're going to improve this, we're going to close the gap, we're going to solve this problem, and then nobody remembers that we tried to solve this problem 20 years ago and nothing happened,
I think honestly, an industry is created and there's no incentive really to solve the problem. And the smarter people among them know it's not a problem. It's not a real problem as such. And they're just in this industry, but here they are. They have jobs that address this non-existent problem. They're not going to give them up. They're not going to say, they're like the Cancer Society, and there's no cancer really, like there's no real cure to be found in the first place. They're just going to keep treading water as long as we keep throwing money at them.
Yeah.
Baltimore City is proudly holding down the entire state of Maryland, their test scores. Baltimore City spends more money on its students' education than all but one other public school district in the United States. Okay. Wow. And and we're like the 25th largest city, and we're outspending every other school district per student. Okay, per student. Last year, 15% of Baltimore City students were able to read, and 11% were able to do math. And this was actually embedded in an article in which this effect was felt across Maryland. But you had to read a whole page down in the article to find out that the reason why only 46% of Maryland children could read at grade level and only a third of them could do math was because of Baltimore City was just this giant sinkhole where there are entire schools where not a child there can read.
Wow.
Hey, I have a friend who was a teacher who has told me that they are the only person they know that reads. They don't know any teachers that read. It's really astonishing. I do think the big picture, you described this ethnic ring of fire around your habitation zone, where you pale faces are still allowed to skulk around and do your nasty business behind the scenes and bring the world down around their ears. Okay, I think that's I really think that's part of the plan. That's a big part of the plan. There's always been this dream, and I know many upper class white liberal baby boomers in Baltimore City that live in mansions in Baltimore City. I have friends in high places that just don't let their wives know that they speak to me. They still dream about Baltimore being an all-white city surrounded by a seething black ghetto. I mean, this is actually the elite white American dream, is that all the good people will live in this city. All the people that with good salaries and a sense of civic responsibility, they'll all live in the city, and everybody else is being shipped out. This process is ongoing.
Yeah, it's the good
real
estate. There's a lot of
efforts.
They need to reclaim that good waterfront real estate. And Saylor covers this as well because it's going on in all major cities. It's already done pretty much in New York and largely in San Francisco.
I experienced that up in New York when I was up there. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I could have slept on the streets out in New York. I mean, it was it was not the New York of the 1970s or 80s that you'd see about in movies. No, this was it was a fully gentrified matrix. I mean, there's prey animals out there. There's plenty of rapists and purse snatchers. I was wondering, Dennis, what do you think about that model, about the idea that we're supposed to have all the upper class mixed race people and the middle class and upper class white people all living in these cities, and then just having all these other people surrounding them in what used to be the place you ran to get away from the crime?
Yeah. Well, we're just going to run out of white people, aren't we? Like Taylor said. That's the problem. We're running out of white people to pass around. And when we were talking about them seeding the suburbs with these black ghetto kids, the way they phrase it is, the justice of it is, these kids are being denied the resources that are out there in the resources somehow are being denied them in the inner city. So they have to be shipped out to the white neighborhood to access those resources. And when I hear resources,
I agree with that.
That's kids' lunch money, your daughter's virginity, just every,
These are all resources that they would like to get closer to.
Yeah, they want to loot those resources, Yeah, it's unsustainable. And you see it here. I mean, and then politically, what's going to happen is, those outlying regions become, and I guess this is part of the plan for our one-party state here, for instance, they just become huge voting blocks. Like I said, Beaverton is now a Latino city, and presumably will be a blue voting block. When they get their one-party rule, I think they're not going to like it, because they're going to find that they can't get sensible centrist people. Like Seattle now is so thoroughly liberal and progressive that I think it's the mayor now is a socialist. And it's just, maybe she'll work. Maybe that'll work. But I think it's not going to work out. They're going to get a lot of awful, damaging, costly policy. And they'll go looking for a Bloomberg, or a Giuliani to rescue them from their Dinkins era,
Seattle, a guy that was my hunting guide 2 years ago out west, has a job working in Seattle. And when he first moved there, he's out on the sidewalk in front of the place where he's working, and these homeless guys are talking to some other homeless guy, and on the phone, and saying, look, because this guy's about to lose his phone that they're talking to, they said, you got to come to Seattle. Here in Seattle, everything is free. You get your insurance. They'll give you a phone just for moving in. So to actually, this guy's burners on his last leg. He's ready to lose his last couple minutes. And they're like, come to Seattle.
Oh, we got a huge problem with the homeless here. We're attracting, because we're a liberal city, and they've got all kinds of services. So what we're drawing them in from all over the region, and and regular liberal Portlanders are starting to feel the strain. Their compassion is really being tested, because we've got people on the streets here. I mean, there's a guy in my neighborhood, and I'm out on the edges I'm not downtown by any means. But there's a guy here who's spent the last, I think, 2 winters on a bus bench, basically. He's every day on this bus bench. Somehow he just persists there. This is where he lives, apparently. I'm saying it's been at least a year that I've seen this guy out there. But,
there's a lady where I took the bus to and from work that lived on that bench for about a year. I think eventually she got sick. I think she was younger than me. She was in her 40s. I
was harassed on the street this week by one of them. Sorry.
Oh, we have huge encampments here in the Silicon Valley area, and I'm sure you guys have seen the videos of Southern California, where the weather is mild here in where I am, and even milder down south, and we just have large tent cities, and there's public parks we can't go to in our area with the kids because there's dangerous people there. And we have a one-party rule. I mean, they don't even pretend anymore about having 2 parties, because they opened up the primary such that all primaries for state offices, they put the top 2 up, and the top 2 will always be Democrats. So on the final ballot in November, you won't even see Republicans for most offices.
One-party rule.
Yeah, how long's that been going on, too? I mean, they're still pretty new into this.
In Baltimore, since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see where Baltimore's now, our homeless population, because our weather's terrible, and we have a large population of predatory hood rats who like to just kill homeless dudes for sport.
Oh.
We don't have such a huge problem with homeless. In the very center of the city where all the tourist attractions are, you'll see heaps of homeless people. And I've got to tell this a story here that I got to tell you because I think it could maybe go into something with Trump's program for the wall. There's a guy named Mr. Muhammad. He's a black dude, black homeless guy, the only homeless guy on Baltimore Street that refused to panhandle the women. He only begs the men. And these people ask for money from the people that work in the office buildings. And he even offers to carry luggage, and he holds the doors for the ladies. And very tall, thin black dude in his 60s with no front teeth. He was attacked by 3 Latino construction workers after they got out of the strip clubs one night, and he beat one of them into a coma. Well, that guy died about 6 months ago, and the cops came and got Mr. Muhammad because this happened right in front of the central police precinct. So cops actually ended up breaking this thing up. So they knew who he was. He went on trial for this, but one of these rich hipster people that works there actually stopped and got it on film. One of these guys that stuck around the, critique of the strip club scene, he actually videoed this, and he showed up at court, and Mr. Muhammad got off. He just did time served, which was a few months, and now he's on the street corners down there, and he's like a celebrity. People are waving to him because he's like the protector of these sissy white people, and he stands there and says, God bless, God bless. Because
he's got no
right. So what I would like, if we could get a petition to get a statue, a life-size statue of Mr. Muhammad to put on Trump's wall, since he actually got acquitted for beating a Latino guy to death on Baltimore Street. But if you think about that, because he's an indigenous homeless guy. He's a homeless Baltimore guy. He gets attacked by 3 dudes who are all making $500 a week. And it's not even certain if these guys are citizens. They're recent arrivals that don't speak English. And if there wouldn't have been somebody that got a video of that, he'd be doing time for murder. Okay? Or manslaughter, depending on whether or not his lawyer could get it knocked down. But he had a public defender. So you think about that. You're attacked by 3 people that aren't even from your city, in your city. Your successful defense, and he's an old man. I mean, these guys were in their 20s, and this is the guy in his 60s. Okay. And he was still looking at time, still looking at spending the rest of his life in prison over this. If it wouldn't have been for some repentant white devil that decided to, surrender to the guilty angels of his nature and give up that video and get him off the hook. So I'll send that link to you, Lynn. But I wanted to think what Dennis thought about that. I mean, one of our indigenous homeless guys fighting against immigration there.
Yeah. We should put the statue of him on the wall, so he's literally standing on the wall to keep us safe.
Yes,
I want to find these guys. Yeah, because that's the outrage. And they keep acting like, and they say it with the most terrible things like terrorism. Like we're supposed to endure all these negative effects as if they're par for the course, as if they're our lot. You know what I mean? These things that we're visiting on ourselves, like the lower test scores I was talking about, and these guys on the street attacking our most vulnerable people, when we should be thinking, like anybody who comes in here, I mean, it should go without saying that his behavior should be, better than you or I, you know what I mean? He's got to prove himself. But our attitude is the opposite of that. We have to prove ourselves somehow. And these fools are just granted, license. Yeah. I mean, you imagine if Mr. Muhammad was white or a white guy with a job, take a white professional, right? Oh, the classic 80s movie villain. He's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy executive. I don't think anything would have saved his butt from this, because sorry.
if he could beat the criminal charges, it doesn't end there. Now he's in a civil suit. This guy, if he's the white dude with money, he's in court for the rest of his life, and he loses a lot of it one way or the other. There's just...
And he could become the subject of a public sort of witch hunt, too, right? If he gets the attention. Someone like a Zimmerman.
Yes.
Or who's the guy? Bernard Goetz. I love the Bernard Goetz story. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I met a guy in New York who talked to Bernard Goetz on a call-in radio show. That Bernard Goetz was like he had found religion or something like that, and he was trying to sell something on this radio show, and this guy just kept on saying, "You're such a great man for what you did." And Goetz was like, "Well, I'd like to leave that behind me." And he's like, "You're such a great man for what you did. You're my hero."
All right, enough with the praise, dude. Yeah. Well, I remember there's a classic rap album called, it's the first Wu-Tang record. And if you know anything about rap, Wu-Tang is like the biggest rap album group. And this record of theirs is like the biggest rap record, maybe. And there's a line in there, though, about Bernard Goetz, something about until Bernard gets what he deserves or something. So I'm thinking of these guys, they take time out from boasting about doing exactly what Bernard does, that is carrying guns and defending yourself like a man. They take time out of that to dog Goetz. And I'm asking myself, well, what has Goetz done wrong from their point of view? Absolutely nothing. He's simply accepted their value system, right? Which is the ghetto value system is, I'm going to defend myself regardless. And if I'm smaller, if I'm outnumbered, that means I'm going to pick up a gun or a knife, right? I mean, he did nothing those guys don't reserve to the boast of doing themselves. So it's funny how we provided our, Black America, at least with this hypocrisy, this license for hypocrisy.
I think it's another reason why, if you're the elite, you want that population as your alternative, lapdog and attack dog. To wield against the other part of the population. And if you look at the case of Mr. Muhammad, the fact that you have a guy that basically, with the welfare system, it was essentially legislated that he was going to be homeless. He was going to be at the mercy of a woman. Okay. He was going to be a fatherless semi-orphan. And then if he had a kid, he would never see the kid. And he would be out on the street. I mean, these guys are even the young, healthy guys that you see on Drugs, Inc. These guys, a lot of them are technically homeless. As soon as their criminal enterprise falls through, they're homeless out on the street. So you'd actually have it's just how callous the system is. This guy's discarded by the system that will use him as a guilt stick to beat us with.
Right.
But just defend, and he literally lives on that street corner where he defended himself. He was attacked on his blanket where he lived. This guy's got a white blanket and he lives on a concrete slab across the street from Larry Flint's Hustlers Club at South in Baltimore. And he's attacked by 3 Latino guys, and then he's the guy that goes on trial. And in the future, I see what I'm looking at Mr. Muhammad as a case of is what's going to happen with white guys in the future, particularly homeless white guys. And I think you're going to start to see more homeless white guys in suburban areas. So from my perspective, I'm wondering how long it's going to take for it to go that way.
I used to find myself thinking, I don't know if this makes sense. I used to find myself thinking when I start getting romantic about it, I think, well, what do you need to do? You need to learn self-defense. You need to learn weapons, and most of all, you need to learn the laws of self-defense in your state to prepare for this coming future.
Yes, yeah, because it's a terror matrix, and you've got to always keep in mind that the biggest enemy is the law, what's above you, and I know that goes counter to what people that actually went to school and paid attention to civics class believe. I don't believe it. I never believed that the law was for me. I always thought the law was to keep me in place. So it hasn't been a big shock for me. I haven't had to readjust. I always knew it was going to be against the law for me to defend myself.
And James, you're a good model for this because you do it all day long, and you also live in a state with what we would call liberal laws or more restrictive laws, or laws where you're going to be at a bigger disadvantage compared to, for example, Texas, where a lot of times these guys get a handshake, a pat in the back, and on your way.
If I lived in Texas, I would wear a Bowie knife.
Yeah.
And it would be legal. Okay? I've had this Bowie knife in my various rooms where I've lived for the past 30 years. 40, 39. And I've never been allowed to carry it anywhere in Maryland. If I could just have this thing on my hip, it wouldn't bother me if 4 or 5 guys tried to rob me. It wouldn't even be a stressful situation.
Yeah.
But I'm not allowed.
We have concealed carry here, apparently.
Well, you do? In Oregon?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Liberal gun laws.
Didn't the conservative, it might have been Seattle. Wasn't there recently a guy that was a conservative dude that was at a protest a couple years ago? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. A year or two ago. Well, not that long ago. No, I was talking about this craziness, the Trump craziness in Seattle, in Portland. So it was during that stretch of hysteria. Yeah, some guy from a conservative news outlet.
I saw the video of him backing up, and he did. Yes. I think he put his hand, or maybe even deployed a gun. But there was a mob of guys following him.
Yeah, and this guy got convicted of threatening with a firearm or whatever. They got him on whatever charge they could manage, and it seems like a railroading. The police are in this political battle, especially. The police are not on your side. Because what I saw too, the guy, so he's got the legal concealed carry. He's on the street and he's just trying to film or interview these lefties, and they're typically hostile types where they've got him surrounded, right? He's backing up and he shows the gun or something. I didn't see it all. But anyway, this looks like a political prosecution. I wish I could remember the guy's name.
All right. I saw the video of him backing up and taking his hand to his gun. I don't recall if I saw him deploy it or not, but it was a whole knot of guys, maybe 5 to 7 guys, and most of them are bigger than him. Half of them are younger than him, and there's a ton of disparity there. It really seemed like a perfect case where, going to it as a holding weapon to keep them from approaching any closer would be a reasonable thing to do. I do it with knives all the time.
Right.
Which is illegal, by the way. I mean, I just haven't been caught doing it.
Yeah, I think that the lesson is really that when you're in a jurisdiction like anywhere here on the West Coast, if you're the bad guy, you're going to get prosecuted under whatever laws they can find. And if you're not the bad guy, you're going to walk away. For example, the illegal immigrant who shot Kate Stiley and killed her, who faced a murder. I guess it was a murder charge, but it became clear that the prosecutor threw the case and he was acquitted. And, he actually killed her. Whereas
they even took down the memorial that people put up for her. People put up a wreath or something. Well, that tells you what's up right there.
So you can't. It's fully a narco tyranny, as you've talked about before too, James. That it's just whose side are you on? That's all.
Well, you look at these demonstrations, the Charlottesville thing. I went to a bunch, and I went to the Republican National Convention expecting there to be trouble, or, during when Trump was going to be nominated. So you see how the cops work, and it's pretty straightforward. You just keep people separated, and they'll usually do it with just establishing a cordon of cops in between two groups. And in Cleveland, they had way more resources than they needed. But you saw how they worked. They were running around in these little bike platoons that would kind of quick reaction forces to wherever they thought any two groups were going to fight. And you saw it happen in Charlottesville. Well, we just won't do that. So you've got the lefties who are all basically been brought there by the system. They've been wound up by the media. They've been funded by all these Soros-esque organizations that a lot of that money, which comes from our tax dollars, and then the last piece of the puzzle is the local law enforcement just stands down and lets them do their work, So the law is not on our side. We're in some early stage of anarcho-tyranny.
I'm looking forward to it because it's interesting. So,
of course you do.
I'm sorry about you. I'm sorry about you humans.
Us non-warriors would like to expire in peace, in our beds. Yeah. I was harassed on the street this week. I did 2 stupid things.
How did that happen?
And I somehow got away with it. I was on the street and I was gonna do a live stream on the walking around downtown Portland. Like it's it's safe, especially in the middle of the day. So I thought I would do a walking, talking live broadcast. And there was a busker on the guy playing the violin. So I said, I'll start here. Usually these guys don't care if you film them. So I'm filming. And I threw a $5 in his cup, so anyway, and then I'm filming him. Apparently he doesn't want me filming him. Don't film, man. Don't film. I said, oh, okay, sorry. So just as I turn away and I point my camera like down the street where nobody's looking, because I'm thinking, oh yeah, I don't want to be sticking my camera in people's faces. I hear on the corner of somewhere back here, hey man, it's a brother, of course. Hey man, you filming me? I'm like, oh shit, here it comes. And I turn and here comes this guy and he's he looks like a criminal type, but he also looks like he's been living on the street for a week or so, right? And he's all fury, right? He's got that classic scary looking face and he's rolling up on me like he's going to intimidate this white boy right now, You're filming me, right? I said, get out of here. And I'm just like, no, get out of here. And he says, give me that. Rewind it. Let me see if I'm on there. So unfortunately, I had to stick my phone in my pocket because I would have liked to record the whole exchange. But then he rolls up so the first stupid thing was pulling that stupid camera out. And the second stupid thing I did was I let him get close. Fortunately for me, he was really scary looking, but he was a little bit shorter, So I just let him come up close and I just got down on his face and faked him out. I haven't been in a fight forever. Right. If this guy really knows how to fight, he can take me. But I'm thinking, screw it. I don't know why. And so I let him get right up on me and I just kind of faked it. Like I'm the tough guy now. And I looked mean at him and I yelled back and get out of here. And I wanted to use that line, wrong white boy. I just wanted to use it. Because I've got to face down a couple of these assholes. I just want to use it once. Go find the right white boy because this is not him. Anyway, I could see the guy, and he's all fury. He's all that mask of malice. But I can see his eyes, and then he's realizing, well, this guy's a little bit bigger than me. He doesn't seem to be responding to the intimidation the way I expect. You can see him calculating, even though he's still trying to fake it, and he slowly kind of backs away. And then I'm so proud of myself that he walks away. He turns and walks away, and I'm like victorious, right? So, but then I realized after it happened that was about the dumbest thing you could do. Because
it wasn't. That wasn't a total botch job. But the important thing is it worked. I mean, what you did worked at the time, and you can remember it, and you can work off of that. My opinion is he was hoping to get a hold of your phone.
Exactly.
Right? And his excuse was going to be you were filming him because he could get $30 for that thing, giving it to somebody. I don't know who fences it out there, but around here is 2 different groups of people that pretty much handle that, and you can get rid of it. But if he's more physical than that guy, if you feel like he's bigger and stronger and you're in trouble, then just be more quiet and you can step around them and it'll freak them out. They'll eventually start choking on their own adrenaline. And usually they won't notice it. All you do is just take your right foot and move it to the outside of his left foot and kind of do a soft pivot. Let your rear foot just kind of drag a little bit so it's not real noticeable. And then to keep the confrontation going, he'll have to step around. And then if you just keep doing that and he's stepping around, usually by the time he makes a half circle, his anxiety will start to get to him. And they usually don't even understand what this is. Okay. Basically what you're doing is you're making sure that if he pulls out a knife, he's not going to be able to stab you just by doing that little step thing. But as far as manufacturing a confrontation, which is how a lot of these guys work, that really shuts down their ability to manufacture the confrontation when you keep on taking an oblique angle on them. And you could talk, not talk, yell, whatever you think's right for his personality then. But just stepping off line like that kind of takes his fuel away from him. And,
well, he's looking for the opening for the cheap shot anyway, right?
Well, there's that. There's that. He might just be looking to get you to say something that'll make him feel like he's justified to do that, because it's really about their own emotions. That, most of these people just figure if they can justify it to themselves emotionally, that's all they need. Okay, and then they'll explain it that way. So he's predominantly, what this is going to be is him trying to get you into a confrontation in which he feels like his higher level of rudeness and loudness and body odor and everything will get you to back down. If he can get you to step back or get you to apologize verbally, then he's going to start pressing for something. Well, then what are you going to do for me? Let me see that phone, make sure you didn't have me on it. And then once it's in his hand, it's his. I mean, I've talked to people that I caught taking stuff off the shelf in a supermarket, and as soon as they put it in their hand, it's his. It's theirs. They'll tell the cop, this is mine. This is mine. As soon as it's in their hand, it belongs to them. So it's a specific plan isn't something you can count on his part. These guys are usually working on this open-ended aggression program where they're just trying to get you to either step back, melt down, apologize, make nice, or say something insulting, like call them fat if they're fat, or use the N-word or something, and then go from there and see what they can work out of the situation. And partially they're working whoever's around there too, because they always feel like they're being looked at. These are people that don't grow up in empty houses with like one or two parents as an only child. These are people that grow up, with a house full of people. So in their mind, there's always an audience. And so they like to have that face-to-face confrontation. So it's real simple. You just have to do that little step around thing. You're just moving your lead foot like a foot out to the right and slightly behind him, so you're not getting farther away. He doesn't get that sense. And it really, next time, just try that while you're doing whatever else you do.
I'm just going to avoid these assholes.
I'll link I think I know a video where you showed this, James. So with Arius, I'll link it in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah. So you'll do your journalism. You'll do to and from your job sometimes.
Just whenever I can, whenever I can find time, yeah.
Well, this is what we were going to talk about, but we've pretty much used up a lot of time, and I guess we were going to have to do it another time.
We didn't get to the subject, did we? Yeah.
We didn't get there.
Well, what's the subject?
I wanted to talk about the LaFond demographic that I have identified.
Did you say femographic?
No, I didn't say that. Demographic.
Oh, okay.
The LaFond demographic, which, of course, James, you're the prototype, but I think Dennis fits there too, which is working class gentlemen men who have not much use for formal education.
She's got a reservoir there. What a guy.
Yeah.
Well,
his formal education has not yet begun.
But who have also, nevertheless become autodidacts and who have found themselves on the right-hand side of the political spectrum. So, I think you understand. I'm going to mute my mic now.
Okay, so what do you think of that, Dennis? I, for one, don't see myself on a political spectrum, but
I guess to stay off it. Like I said, I do this other show, and it's all political.
James Mesklin said you were to the right of Evola.
Okay, so I'm like too right to be.
Barbarism over civilization thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's the. Okay, so, but you vote, right?
I do.
Okay.
But, I make a point of not voting on things I don't know enough about. Like the last time, I think I just voted Trump. I voted for Trump. And I didn't vote on most of the other things because I didn't know any of the issues. Yeah, I vote intermittently.
Okay. And you have political discussions with people online?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but you're not rabidly political. You don't have an ideology you're pushing. What do you?
You said
I didn't hear you.
I'm like you. You said somewhere that if you had your druthers, you'd sit around writing poetry all day or something.
Right.
If it was up to me, I would spend my days in, reading and listening to music and, doing, absolutely apolitical things. But yeah. And
this led us to end up on the right side of the cultural spectrum and, for people to vote political too. Which is interesting. I've actually became a savage, feral, urban white trash guy. Out of defense, I was born and raised in suburbia. I was born in Baltimore City, but my parents immediately moved me out. I was raised according to all the bullshit suburban white guilt egalitarian ethics that there are. I just didn't trust adults. I was like, I said, these people were just taking me down a bad road. I don't trust these people, because for one thing, adults need to use force, right? So I was like, adults aren't a legitimate group of people to listen to because they're going to force. If you don't agree with them, they're going to force you. So I just didn't believe stuff adults told me. That's the only thing.
I think maybe the uneducated guy in our situation, we ended up here in part maybe because we were not that invested in the system. We have a bit of independence. If we had gone to school and become lawyers or doctors, it would be very hard for us to express these views, to say the least, right? We would have all the skin in the game.
Yes, and it's kind of hard not to imbibe some of the indoctrination because if you're a person that tries to get along with other people, when you disagree, you're going to try to strike some kind of compromise, unless you're a fanatic or a whack job. So I have, at times in my life, had a half liberal view of the world. I had no choice at some points to, agree that in my mind I knew it was a fiction, but agree that, yes, this is the rule I have to live by.
It's a curious thing. I wonder how the average person who's clearly smart enough to know it's kind of bullshit, all of the convention that we live under, but how is it that they justify it? I think they think it's not that bad, that the lie is not that far from reality and we can just fake it. You know what I mean? That we just fake it a little longer, we'll make it to the point where white and black people behave more or less the same, for one instance.
Right. Well, if that happens, then it's just going to be like being at a 300 million person rap concert. Okay? Because that's the only way that's going to happen. Okay. If you equalize behavior, it's going to be on the downside. It's not going to be on the upside.
Well, you were talking about this advertising that's really big now in the cross date and interracial dating, right? They're just pushing it hard. And it's as if they decided, well, we're never going to square the circle with racism, so we're just going to blend everybody out of existence and become this bland, tan-colored mass out here. One ethnicity, I guess is how they imagine it.
I'm actually I wrote a story about it, and I'm working on a book against the golden race, which is really about that. I really think that the idea is to monocrop people into one group, which is it's a disaster with any crop. People are shitty enough to begin with. I don't think you have to go and do that to them. The one thing that's interesting is I lived with a black lady for 7 years, and we would go out to eat. And we always played this game where we would try to determine the level of disapproval. And we're in Baltimore County, real close to the Baltimore City line. And we tried to pay attention to who gave us nasty looks and who gave other people nasty looks. And the accepted interracial dating is the black male and the white woman. That is what is socially acceptable. And you would never see any disapproving looks cast at the black man and the white woman. You just wouldn't see that. The white man and the black woman was very rare. I think in 7 years we ran into like 2 other pairs of our ilk, and their jaws almost hit the floor. I guess they also thought they were the only ones. And we just noticed that the disapproval all went against the white man and the black woman. And if you match it up with the way these different races are set together in newscasts, in Baltimore, every single newscast, the anchor is a blonde white woman and a light-skinned black guy. every single newscast. And the white guys are only allowed in sports and weather, and all the Asian chicks and the black chicks and the brunettes, they're streetwalkers. They're only allowed to be on the street reporting on stuff. It's like nothing but the blonde princess and her black buck right there. That's it. That's all you're allowed to have. And you see it on the commercials too. I was talking to you about the betting commercial.
Right.
The interracial betting commercial I'm watching with a white nationalist, and he's like, "Oh no, we know it's about ready. Something's going to pop out of the woodpile." And I was like, "All right, give this a chance, because it's not going to be for him." Okay, we're already written out of the picture. And the black dude who looks like your light skinned action movie star, it's popular now, like the bald dude on Criminal Minds. He lays in bed with the white queen, and he rolls over on his side, and she spoons him. And
right.
I'm like, dude, look at that. You know, I'd rather be written out of the commercial than be getting spooned by this hipster bitch on this bed. You know,
it's just like, the image of it, right? The white mother and because part of the appeal of this black male now is that he's viewed as this wounded creature that they can mother and
yes.
smother with their goodness. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
And all the newscasts I saw up in New York, they were sportscasts that are targeted at a white male audience predominantly, even basketball. Most of your viewers are white men. All of the moderators were women, and they were all white. And all the experts were black dudes, and they all spoke with pleading little hands. Their body language was the white woman is looking down over the really wonderful sweep of her left breast, and her manicured hand is out there on the table, and she is always seated on the right, and he is always on the left, and she's looking down, and she's even in a jacked up chair looking down at this poor little Negro dude who looks like he's trying to explain to his mistress, you know, why he didn't pick all the cotton or why the iced tea wasn't sweet enough. It's so demeaning. And all these guys were coached on the same body language. They all got these little give me hands doing these circles when they're speaking to the woman. And when she uses hand language, it's one hand is rooted on the countertop and the other one flips over like God dispensing knowledge. Okay. And I mean, just the way these people coached was just atrocious. I'd have been more pissed off if I was a black dude watching this. As it was, being a white devil, I was just humored by it. I thought it was hilarious. People thought I was crazy laughing at the silent sportscast at the bar, but I thought it was laughable. The best one was when there's 3 black dudes and a white woman. And now the little dweebish, the little light-skinned nerdy black guy is next to her in the center left. The guy that talks like he knows a little bit, the masculine-looking black dude, is on the far left. Behind her is this dude that is as big as Shaquille O'Neal. The image you get when you look at this is almost like he is the high back throne that's been carved into a gargoyle of power or something over his shoulder. At one point, as she's speaking to the guy that seems to actually be the expert that's on the far side of the table, this dude, the big black dude behind her, actually looms like he's supporting her in his body language. I mean, this is like watching a slave mistress with her biggest buck telling the field hands to go out and do more work. It was just that ridiculous. And not hearing a word, but the woman hardly ever said anything. She would demand answers. She had a demanding body language when she said something like, now what are you going to tell me? and the idea that any of these women knew anything about the sports they were commenting on was ridiculous. Right. It was really instructive to look at that. I mean, it was quite ridiculous. But
the way they treat us now, it's like kindergarten. Remember in kindergarten, whenever you had to line up, it was boy, girl, boy, girl. If
yes.
you just put 2 boys next to each other, they're going to cause trouble. That's the way they treat white people. We have to spread them out because any 3 white guys talking is a conspiracy, you know.
And it's where it's also true. If you watch documentaries on crime in prison, the large majority of people in prison gangs are Latinos and blacks. But the most feared prison gangs are these small Aryan Brotherhood gangs in prison. And federal agencies spend more time investigating this tiny minority of organized prisoners that are Caucasians than they do these vast Latino and black prison gangs. I mean, we had Terrence White, the head of the Black Guerrilla family, was knocking up female prison guards. He got four of them pregnant. Okay, and he ordered the assassination of one of our mayor, one of her nephews, from prison. This is of no interest to the federal authorities. What they care about is these 5 old white dudes that have developed a secret cipher language and can talk to each other. And that's what the federal dollars are spent on. So I think it's something that, as members of the most hated race, we're just going to have to deal with as our kind of like baseline condition for existing.
Yeah. But Terrence there, I mean, he illustrates the problem we were talking about earlier with the criminal class being integrated with the legal justice system by relatives and stuff. Oh. He had some public figure's nephew assassinated. It was probably easier for him because they're in the same community.
Yeah, and you're right. He ordered it from prison. It's the whole thing's so inbred. Notwithstanding, though, I do think he should be the next president of the United States after Trump finishes 2 terms. Okay, seriously. I mean,
president of idiocracy, at least.
Well, he'll be the last white president we have. That's a dude. Okay. No, Terrence White.
Oh, Terrence White
gets out of prison and runs after Trump's done with however long his reign's going to be. His last name is White.
Okay.
At least we'll have a white president in that sense. Okay, but otherwise, he's probably the president we deserve. But I hope Trump has a long reign. Okay.
Speaking of this Aryan Brotherhood, I don't know much about them, but I remember reading about a Jewish attorney who had got a hold of them, and he was making it his life's work to find and prosecute these guys in prison. And I actually found myself feeling a bit of sympathy for this prison gang, because I'm thinking to myself, I know they're probably bad guys, but at the same time, they're outnumbered in there.
Yeah,
they're in the
Black Guerrilla survive.
Yeah. Right. How else are they going to survive?
It's a survival gang, and they're being targeted. Literally is a survival gang. That's fascinating that you uncovered that. That's not surprising at all. I've seen it on 5 or 6 documentaries. All the federal FBI guys, all they want to talk about is the Aryan Brotherhood. That they don't care about the Nortenos or the Serenos.
There's another weird thing going on here. Another weird thing is that I think the minority criminals, at the end of the day, aren't that interesting anymore. You know what I mean? Because we know what we get. With the Cholo gangs, you know what you got. It's pretty straight. And with the black gangs, we know what we got. It's all pretty depressing and grim. And this idea of the criminal mastermind, we keep trying to, like in The Wire, right? There are 2 or 3 criminal masterminds that just are totally implausible to me. Maybe I'm a racist. You know what I mean? But then you get to the AB, and it's a little more interesting. They got a little more brains, and they've got a little more mythology behind them, and they're doing crazy stuff
and
like training.
Tom Wolfe, right? The great white defendant. It's always more fun for the cops to go after the white guy.
Yeah.
Part of it, I believe, is the more interesting villain. It's not just a hate whitey thing. I think part of it is you can get a more nuanced character. I've watched about 20 episodes of Drugs, Inc. I'm still trying to find the black guy in a city somewhere in the U.S. who pronounces heroin and not heron, okay? And I can't find it. It's like the same dialect in every single city. Yeah. And so every city you go to, they interview the black gangsters, and they all have their Jesse James scarf on, and they're pointing guns at the camera. And every city you go to, they interview the Latino gangsters, and they're all wearing Mexican pro wrestling masks and talking about doing business and being disciplined. Yeah. It's just like the same thing everywhere you go, So I can understand. white bikers and stuff like that being more interesting than these guys, because you'll get a little bit more nuance.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, they keep looking for the great white defendant, and then on the other hand, they keep looking for that great black criminal mastermind. They want to find that guy who's a genius. He's running some criminal organization, but he should be running Dow Chemical, if not for the horrible racism that's keeping him out of it. Like in The Wire, right? They have everybody loves. I love this guy, Stringer Bell. Everybody loves Stringer, but to me, Stringer Bell is thoroughgoing nonsense. I don't believe it for a minute.
He's the most fictional character in the video. You know what? It's not a real. You know who's a more realistic character? Omar Little. The faggot assassin, the gay assassin, he's actually more realistic than Stringer Bell.
Or Marlowe, I think it's Marlowe, it's the guy at the end who wins at the end because he's such a psychopath that he just wins out because he's just so freaking brutal at the end of the day. But yeah.
They have all the real gang leader types in there, but they're all, it's not Stringer Bell. There's an occasional Barksdale. There's many Cheeses. Okay, the guy Cheese. There's a lot of him out there. And then the psychopath, the guy that was played by the rapper with the lazy eye. There's a lot of him out there now too. But yeah, the other ones are kind of that's to make it interesting. and really, the Stringer Bell character. That actor is going to be the next James Bond. Did you know that?
Is he?
Okay, I actually wrote a paper why James Bond should be a black guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. I think I lost like three likes off of Facebook for writing that one. It was a couple years ago, but I thought it was pretty funny. I'll have to when it comes out, I'll have to try to dig it up. But I just thought there was a lot of characteristics that kind of matched the character. So, yeah. I mean,
I don't know. We were talking about the all this deliberate, all this deliberate of running us out of TV by making us the fall guy in television, the white guy, making him the doofus fall guy. I get a little mad when I see actors and these are great actors who I like a guy like Denzel Washington and this Idris Elba, Stringer Bell, because they make a whole career out of here pretending to be white guys. You know what I mean? Pretending to be capable.
Well, and they're taking the character. They're literally taking the characters. Like they have, they made Denzel Washington the new Equalizer for a movie, and all he did was kill white dudes through the whole movie. The bad guys were all white guys.
Right. So I mean, it seems to me that it's just a minor outrage because when I see Idris Elba, I know this is an impressive guy, but I'm not buying the idea that he's some mastermind. It's just not doing it because I'm not finding these guys in real life. They're all over the TV.
I didn't watch The Wire. I couldn't watch it for some reason, but I watched this one about the motorcycle gang, Sons of Anarchy, and this is like in my neighborhood, right? It was set in Northern California, and so they'd have these guys come in from the Sierra and go to Oakland, and then the Oakland gangsters were like wearing 3-piece suits and super professional business really corporate kind of culture. It just made me laugh. Yeah.
We repeatedly treated to this, right? That the leader of the ghetto gang shows up and he's this smart guy,
Even if he's smart, he's not going to be wearing a 3-piece suit. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
he's got style.
Yeah. And it's run seriously like a boardroom, in an office park kind of thing.
Of course. Actually, I know a biker who really was disgusted by the Sons of Anarchy, and he was an actual one percenter. He's like, don't listen to that shit. But the Drugs Inc. documentary, where these guys all speak for themselves, you get the truth. And I'm sitting here with my landlord, who's a financial consultant, okay? And we're watching Drugs Inc. And at a certain point, at every one of these black ghetto gangs, you get to the head guy who's explaining how much it costs him to bring the stuff in, how he cuts it up, how much he makes off of it, what his profit is. And the guy sitting next to him, he's doing the math in his head. And he's like, that idiot just screwed himself out of $40,000. These guys are stupid. No wonder they got to constantly kill each other.
That is it. that's the great lie that they're passing off, because they want us to think that these guys are doing this because they have no other options, when in fact they're doing this because they have no other options because they're not capable of going out and earning an honest living,
Right, and they could make $1 million a year, and they still live in this $10,000 house with no front door on it.
Well, and that's the other thing. And all these guys show up and how much money they have, and they flash a fan of bills. It's their life savings, right? They don't even understand money, And I'm supposed to think these are masterminds. And gosh, we should just be getting over our racism and developing their natural brilliance.
Right, and make sure they're CEOs instead of having to run these drug outfits. So, yeah, that's the standard narrative. But the lazy documentary is, I think, offering a little bit of a cure to that, because these documentaries where they don't even have a reporter on the ground, where it's just a camera guy, and then a voiceover is done at some central location, and basically everybody's talking for themselves, then you get to see what's true. So that's one way that sloth and television production has helped a little bit. And a lot of people watch that stuff. That stuff's actually on Netflix, and it lets these idiots speak for themselves.
Yeah, and the mainstream media keeps losing not just viewers, but credibility all the time.
Right, and actually, that Netflix, most of the stuff on there is horrible, especially the made-for-Netflix stuff. It's just so leftist, it's hard to even stomach it. But when it comes to documentary, like modern urban crime documentaries, you can make them real quick as long as you don't have to pay somebody to go out there and ask questions and spin a narrative. So you're actually starting to get some straight documentaries that are really raw footage for postmodern anthropology studies.
That's what we need in our time. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the trend. And with stuff like YouTube channels and stuff like this, it's kind of shredding away a lot of the BS.
Yeah, so you can find it, and you can even find it right in the middle of, their big ivory tower. So,
and it's hard for them to hide stuff. If they're going to go out and do a documentary on street gangs, there's a limit to how much they can spin and hide.
Especially when their shtick is, sometimes they will put some left-wing spins in there, but it's so opposed by what the subjects themselves say and do on camera that it's laughable.
Right.
So, I think it's just that the increased media that we have, the more diverse media, it helps you. It helps you see things. So I'm pleased by that. And I would really encourage you to practice your step around in the mirror, Dennis, in case you get caught out there.
I was going to ask if I could come train in with. Yeah.
Anytime you want. Yes.
I want it. I want to take up some sort of jiu-jitsu or something, but just trying to find the time.
Well,
I just want to be ready for trouble when it comes. Sorry.
We'll send you some links to some videos that it's real basic stuff. I mean, really, if you're standing in the right place rather than the wrong place, it makes it a whole different thing.
Yeah.
A lot of situations.
And half the time, these guys, they get people by cheap shotting them or waiting for them to look away, or they're waiting for you to be unready. As far as I can see.
The basic wisdom they operate by is if they hang their head in front of your head, then you can't really hurt them, and all they have to do is take one step to the side as they're hitting you, and they can hurt you. So you take that one step to the side first before they hit you. And then they don't even pull the trigger. And
it kind of signals them that you know what's up, too, that you at least know what's coming and how to defend, maybe. Right.
Yes. And any signal that you send out through positioning and body language and everything is far superior when you're dealing with, the orcish population, we could say.
Well, Dennis, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry to stop you guys, but I have already about 2 hours of tape, and my kids have had enough, so I have to go.
Okay. Good luck with the insurrection.
The children have had enough of us, have they?
Yeah.
They've had enough, but I really appreciate you coming on, Dennis. Probably be good to have you on again. And James, thank you as always. And that was episode 36.